This is what you want. This is what you get. This is what you get.
You have located GeekFest Rants, the entertainment podcast for genre geeks like you.
Shall we play a game?
Covering the world of vintage and current film and television since 2010.
Game over, man. It's game over.
Featuring in-depth conversations on sci-fi, horror, fantasy, comics, toys, and conventions.
So say we all. So say we all.
And now sit back, relax, and enjoy today's show.
In 1975, he directed Jaws. In 1978, he directed Close Encounters of the Third Kind. In 1981, he directed Raiders of the Lost Ark. And now, Steven Spielberg brings us E.T., the Extraterrestrial. We will witness the arrival, the search, the desertion, the fear, the discovery, the friendship,
I'm keeping him.
the secret, the love, the warning, the signal, the mystery, the danger, the intrusion, the wonderment, the enchantment, the hope. The connection has been made. Universal Pictures presents Steven Spielberg's E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to GeekFest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and today we are going to talk about a book, specifically a promotional book, or booklet, if you will. A pretty large size, large, thin booklet that came inside Variety magazine back in possibly 1981 or 1982. Now, I'm not too familiar with Variety. I don't know if they still do this, but apparently they used to do this, or at least some of these studios used to do this. And that is include a promotional booklet promoting what movies are coming out the following year. And what I have here today is a coming soon from Universal Studios in 1982 promotional booklet. So we're going to go through a few of these movies and the importance of this booklet when it comes to me as one of these items that is one of those lost treasures from my childhood, just like a lot of my Star Wars figures and ships and some other collectibles, my Indiana Jones 12-inch figure and my V the Final Battle and my E.T., all of those other toys that I used to have. This was a very special book that I somehow got my hands on, and it is so much more special now, much, much later in terms of the importance of the films that are talked about. And the other thing that we talk about in this episode is going to be one specific movie that I kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into the poster or the art, if you will, the promotional art, and that is John Carpenter's The Thing. So let's get started with the coming soon from Universal in 1982 book episode.
What did I teach you?
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
You will not laugh. You will not cry. You will learn by the numbers. I will teach you.
Can you dig it?
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
That spawn of Satan.
Oh, really?
The Force will be with you, always.
Back in late 1981 or early 1982, I was 11 or 12 years old at the time. I was already going to the movies by myself. I do remember seeing Raiders of the Lost Ark, for example, by myself. Probably, I imagine, a repeat viewing of The Empire Strikes Back, probably by myself. 1980, maybe 81, a re-release or something like that. But I believe it was 1982 where things kind of exploded in terms of so many good movies came out that year. I've done, I think, a 2-part show, might have been a 3 or a 2-part show a long time ago, having to do with 1982, that being a colossal year for genre films. You know, we talked about, Wrath of Khan, Blade Runner, Tron, Conan, The Thing, you name it, E.T. It was just a monster of a year for films. Now, granted, for myself and even my friends at the time, we obviously didn't appreciate or didn't understand what an important year that was, or we were living through. It is now, or it's been after 1982, a very special year that we look back on and different people look back on and have fond memories of so many great movies coming out. But I should have known better at the time. Even though I wasn't very versed in the specifics of genre filmmaking, obviously I was a sci-fi, action, fantasy nerd. I wasn't much of a horror nerd, I would say. And around that time, again, I'm talking about 1980, 1981, I had already started tippy-toeing into going to the movies without my parents. In 1980, I would probably say Superman 2, something I had seen on my own. Flash Gordon, another one I had seen on my own. The Empire Strikes Back. I had first seen it with my mom, and then I probably saw it on my own. And there were movies I remember that I wanted to see, but they were comedies that I tried to see with my parents, but we couldn't get tickets. Movies like Airplane. It's just stuff that I could not pull off. So I was pretty limited in terms of what I could see, but it was definitely the beginning of my movie watching period on my own. Granted, I've already talked about this before, that even in Uruguay, I would watch some, kiddie kind of family films on my own sometimes. 1981 hits and everything increases. So, for example, Raiders of the Lost Ark, I got to see it on my own. Quest for Fire, believe it or not, I saw that on my own. That's the same year Escape from New York and Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior had come out, but I hadn't, I didn't see those. That was also the year of Outland, which it was R-rated. So, I was attracted to the sci-fi aspect of it, but the fact that it was R-rated, that really limited my capacity to see films that year. I mean, again, I'm 11 years old at the time, but we still have something like Clash of the Titans. Perfect for Time Bandits, Dragon Slayer. These are movies that kind of resonated with me, and they were like perfect for me for that age. I think I actually saw Heartbeeps in the theater, believe it or not. Not too proud about that one. But around that time, also, I remember, and I think I told this story before, my dad took me and a friend to see Blood Beach. God knows why on earth I would have wanted to see that film. I believe it might have been 1981. And because obviously it was R-rated, you needed an adult to get you in. And that movie, which, believe it or not, I have not seen since. And I know I could see it, but it messed me up. I was obviously too young to see something like that. And that, I think what happened is that movie turned me off from horror, especially R-rated horror, for a long time. So that, I think, could explain why I continued to gravitate to the fantasy, sci-fi, adventure side, of things. 1981 also was the year that For Your Eyes Only came out, another film I saw on my own. But I do remember that somewhere around 1981, and it's probably, let's see, from what I understand, For Your Eyes Only came out in the States in June of 81. So I would say probably May of 81 or something like that. My grandfather worked in the city, and by that I mean Manhattan. We lived in Queens. I went to school in Queens. I was 11 years old at the time. But my grandfather worked very close to a place where they did printing, like a print shop, like a big industrial print shop. He didn't work there. He actually worked at a place where they created flavors and essence, like different type of smells for different type of products and that kind of thing. He was a chemist, even though he had no chemistry experience whatsoever. He was an ex-plumber, actually. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent here. The point is that I guess at certain points when he would go to the dumpster to throw stuff out, other companies in that area would be dumping stuff on their own. And he brought back from this print shop to me these prints of For Your Eyes Only preview admittance tickets, like uncut sheets. I guess you could call them proofs, maybe. I don't know if that's what you call them or you called them back then. But at the time, I wasn't too keen on what James Bond was. I might have had a little bit of an idea because I do remember seeing Moonraker in the theater. So it was one of those things where you kind of make that connection of like, wait a minute, is that the same guy that used to be in that other movie? Kind of like with Star Wars, when all of a sudden you're seeing a commercial or you see a picture for Empire Strikes Back. And I was like, wait a minute, are those the same characters that were in that other movie that I love? But anyway, the point was that, my grandfather every now and then would bring something like that. And burned into my head is the memory of those For Your Eyes Only prints. I wish I had them these days, obviously, just like anything else. And on another occasion, now I don't know if this came from my grandfather from one of these print shops, or maybe this came from my dad from working in the city. I don't know. I honestly do not know. But the bottom line is that this came from somewhere outside of my normal purview of places that I would visit. So it must have came from either my dad or my grandfather. And what I'm talking about here is the Universal Pictures for 1982 advertising supplement to Variety magazine, the Variety newspaper, the one that's still out right now. And basically what this is a big soft cover booklet. It's like a 1.5 feet tall, about 1 foot wide, and it lists 23 of the movies that Universal is about to put out in 1982 as a form of advertising, as a form of getting people excited about it. Again, obviously, this is pre-internet, so there was a lot more print-related advertising when it came to these things. Now, I had that book, I remember, and I remember going through the book and looking at it and certain things kind of popping and certain things kind of blending into the background. And this is a book that I've thought about for years for different reasons. And just like with my Star Wars insanity, trying to replenish my original collection of whatever, whether it's Star Wars or some E.T. toy or V the Final Battle toy or something, from my childhood. This booklet, I remember, was something special. And the reason that I love this book so much is because it's basically these large pages that for 3/4 of the page, you have a poster of a movie that's going to come out. And then on the left side, on the 1/3 section or the 1/4 section, you have the main credits of that film. So I'm not going to go in an exact order because I'm going to be ending the book on a certain poster that I want to tell you a little story about. So as you flip through the pages, and I don't know for sure if the manner in which they present these movies are in the manner that they're being released, or is it in the manner that you think is more important, like the bigger stars come up first? I don't know for sure. Bottom line is that number 1 here, you have On Golden Pond. And this was a pretty important film in terms of, I think, Academy Award nominated film. This is Henry Fonda, Jane Fonda, Katharine Hepburn. This was a big dramatic piece for the year, I remember. Number 2, you have The Border, starring Jack Nicholson. Harvey Keitel. Wow. I don't remember this film too well, But it's interesting, how the initial advertising for this worked. For On Golden Pond, I'm pretty sure that the poster or the artwork that they feature here is pretty much the artwork they featured in the final product. For The Border, it's very possible the same thing. It's that. Number 3 is Missing. That's a movie with Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek. I remember that movie. That movie ended up on cable quite a bit, I remember. Pretty heavy, dramatic piece. Number 4, Conan the Barbarian. So here we go. Now we're dealing with something more up our alley. And the artwork that they use is the traditional artwork, the same artwork that you do end up seeing on the main poster, the American release anyway. This is a movie I did not see in the theater. It was R-rated, so it kind of was like, oh, well, R-rated, I don't know. I got to take my dad and I got to take my mom. I don't know if I want to see. It's one of those deals. And, I obviously... Today, I regret not seeing it that era. But hey, listen, I learned to love this movie when I finally saw it. I wonder if I might have seen it on HBO or something. I don't even know. Maybe I rented it on VHS or something like that. I don't know for sure. But I mean, these days, to me, this is a classic film, an amazingly classic film. Now, keep in mind, these are all Universal Pictures. So this is the slate for Universal. There's a lot of movies that these guys are putting out this particular year. Number 5 is something called Barbarossa. And there's a drawing of what looks like well, obviously it is because the stars of the film are Willie Nelson and Gary Busey. Willie Nelson and Gary Busey. I don't remember Gary Busey ever being a popular actor until Lethal Weapon. And I don't remember Willie Nelson ever being a popular actor. This is apparently a Western because the tagline is the outlaw, the outcast, and the legend that was bigger than both of them. It's like, okay. Again, no memory of this whatsoever. Then you have a movie called Green Ice. And the tagline on this one is diamonds are forever, but emeralds are more deadly. And it's definitely an action picture. There's a guy who seems to be shooting like some kind of little laser thing and a girl hanging onto his leg, very, very Star Wars-y, young poster type. And she's shooting a gun off to the side. And there's what probably is the bad guy, shooting in that direction. And in the bottom, you see some like soldier looking guys and some parachute guys coming down. And in the whole background of this thing, there's a big green emerald because I guess Green Ice is the name of the movie. And it starts Ryan O'Neal, Ann Archer, and Omar Sharif. No idea. I don't remember much about this movie. Might say that it made it to cable, so I might have seen it on cable. And again, talk about HBO here when we had our questionable HBO hookup. Number 7, Cat People. An erotic fantasy about the animal in us all. Ooh. This is the movie starring Natasha Kinski, Malcolm McDowell, John Hurt, and Annette O'Toole. Obviously, this is a remake of an older black and white horror film called Cat People. Again, R-rated, horror, it wasn't up my alley. Again, as with most of these, I eventually saw it sometime. I don't think I was very impressed by it. I mean, I don't know if it would be a little different today if I saw it, if I would feel differently, but I remember it was kind of like, yeah, whatever. Number 8, Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid. Laugh or I'll blow your lips off. That's the tagline. This is a Steve Martin vehicle. Black and white. He plays like 1940s detective type of deal. And it's a Carl Reiner film. I actually saw this in the theater. And I remember, first of all, I don't know why I saw this. I couldn't really imagine why. I mean, granted, I went to see a lot of movies. When I started going to the movies, I would see just about anything that I could get my hands on. So this might fall under the what the hell were you watching kind of movies. I remember there were some funny spots about it, but one of the things that I remember the most about this movie is that he does a lot of like narrating, a very straight tone, typical 1940s cadence of the narrating detective, that kind of thing. And I remember that after seeing this movie, I had already seen Blade Runner. And if you guys remember, Blade Runner has those narratives, Harrison Ford, is narrating some of the story. And I kept thinking, oh my God, they're sounding alike. Is Steve Martin copying Harrison Ford or is it vice versa? Obviously, those two movies couldn't be further apart. Number 9, The Dark Crystal. From Gary Kurtz, producer of Star Wars, and creators Jim Henson and Frank Oz, comes a unique world of a wondrous civilization and a totally new concept in fantasy adventure. And the image here is the castle. It's a conceptual, I think, image of the castle that we see in the movie. You don't see any of the characters at all. All you know is that it's a Frank Oz, Jim Henson vehicle. Gary Kurtz is involved. There's a whole history with Dark Crystal having to do with Gary Kurtz after he left Star Wars and how it all came about. But I do remember, I did see this in the theater, but it was definitely not from this book, because this book really doesn't tell you much. I mean, this book, it almost looks as if it's a animated film. I mean, if you look at the picture, you're like, oh, this must be an animated film. But no, it was a real, granted, a lot of puppetry, but the specific art that they're showing you here is not exactly what we ended up with. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is going to be a very important point when we get to the final films, is that a lot of these use preliminary art, not final art. Some of them do. So, for example, Cat People, this uses a picture, a very high-speed picture of Natasha Kinski, and it's raining, and you can see like cat eyes on her eyes, the little slits, the little cat slit eyes. For Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid, it's a collage of black and white and brown and white, those old-timey kind of pictures, and him holding a gun straight at the audience, and in the background there's a shadow in plaid with his hands up. So, I mean, granted, it's a comedy, so it's a really weird-looking poster. Number 10, A Little Sex. This is obviously some kind of a romantic comedy. Tim Matheson, Kate Capshaw, Edward Herrmann, and John Glover. I absolutely remember nothing of this film. I don't even remember if I saw it on cable. I wasn't much into comedies. That wasn't my thing. I do remember wanting to see Airplane, and I didn't get to see it. And I remember wanting to see Vacation, and I didn't get to see it. So who knows? I don't even know. I honestly doubt I even got to see this film in any shape or form. I'm going to skip 11 and 12 because those are the ones we're going to finish with. But number 13 is The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Oh, another thing about A Little Sex, as far as the poster art goes, there is no poster art, really. And I don't know if this is what they ended up with because I'm not familiar with the film, but it's basically a pink-colored background with a box in the middle, which is gray, and this says A Little Sex, the words. There's no characters, no locations, no art. It's just a very simple, almost like a teaser. So there's really not much to talk about on that one. Number 13, The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. Yeah, this was something else. The tagline, this much fun just couldn't be legal. Get it? Because, yeah. Burt Reynolds, Dolly Parton. This is a musical comedy, completely not what I'm into at all. The poster is, I believe, what they did end up using in the final product. There's the logo made out of like rope and wood. There's the map of Texas, a TV with two women legs coming out of the TV, and you see Dolly and Bert in the background smiling. Art. Yeah, okay, whatever. No big deal. Number 14, Agatha Christie's Evil Under the Sun. Again, not really what, my cup of tea in terms of a murder mystery at the time, especially a period piece murder mystery. Now, granted, it is Agatha Christie, so, there is some famousness to it. The tagline is, when Hercule Poirot arrives on Danfine's glamorous island resort, he found murder, mystery, and evil under the sun. So you got a picture of the detective in the middle and the circle, which is like the sun, and then these rays are coming out of it, and all around the edges of the poster on the left and the right, all the different characters drawn. This was a big, big vehicle. Peter Ustinov, Jane Birkin, Colin Blakely, James Mason, Roddy McDowell. There's some names there. Maggie Smith that I recognize these days. Some other names I don't. This was number 14. Number 15, The Sting 2. This is the sequel to, I guess, the original Sting, starring Jackie Gleason and Mac Davis, Terry Garr, and Carl Malden. The art is very lame as far as I'm concerned. Tagline, the most incontestably entertaining concept for a movie since The Sting. consider the consequences. Obviously, CON is in capital letters too, so you get that little tagline. The art itself is basically what appears to be a folded $100 bill with two pictures, one of Jackie Gleason and one of Mac Davis. Those are pictures. They put pictures of them, but it's art, for the bill and for the money clip. It's also an art piece that they used. I'm pretty sure I didn't see this movie. I don't honestly know if I ever saw the first one, to tell the truth. Yeah, whatever. Now, here's one that, by looking at the poster, I'm like, I have no idea what this is, and I really care. Fast Times at Richmond High. A classic teenage comedy starring Jennifer Jason Leigh, Sean Penn, Brad Hamilton, Phoebe Gates. Who could forget Phoebe Gates? Ray Walston. This uses the art of a drawn high school locker, pretty beat up, and it's got a whole bunch of writing on it, like kids have been writing on it. Led Zepp, Lincoln, Surf Nazis, Mr. Zog, Sex Wax, I Love Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, This School Sucks, and so does I don't know what that means. And the tagline on this one is, before there was Animal House, there was Animal High. So they seem to be kind of riding on the Animal House popularity. I would say this is nothing like Animal House. This is a completely different kind of movie. But at the time, no interest whatsoever in this, for me. Number 17, Second Thoughts. And this is a series of what look like to be pictures, little snapshots with borders. And you have the actors in the film, which are Lucy Arnaz, Craig Wasson, and Ken Howard. I know our Lucy Arnaz is Lucy and Ricky's daughter, I'm pretty sure. And the actor, I think it's Craig Wasson. I think he is the same guy from, what was the name of that De Palma film? Oh, I can't remember. Tagline. Amy Ash is a contemporary woman, independent and determined to stay that way. There are only two complications, her lover and her ex-husband. They will stop at nothing. Yeah, okay, that's great. Don't remember it. I'm pretty sure I didn't see it. Nothing. Number 18, Frances, starring Jessica Lange, Sam Shepard, Kim Stanley. Tagline, Frances Farmer was an actress and a rebel, and the most dramatic, shocking, and courageous role she ever played was her own life. And what you got here is basically a picture of Jessica Lange wearing a white, fluffy kind of dress, looking off to the side pensively, and the word Frances, like it's been written in cursive. Very plain. I doubt this was the poster. I mean, this is very, very preliminary looking, to me at least. And I told you, Second Thoughts is just it's just a couple of snapshots. I couldn't tell you what the artwork will look like in the final version. Number 19, The Pirates of Penzance. Tagline, from the smash Broadway hit, all the exuberance, youthfulness, zaniness, and romance that made the play a smash now comes to the screen. Now, what's interesting about this poster, if it is I don't think it is the final poster, you have the title of the film with two skulls and crossbones because they're pirates, obviously. And then you have a whole bunch of, what do you call that? Steering mechanism in a boat. A wheel? Damn it, I don't know what it's called. A mast? No, the mast is not. That's not a mast. Whatever the hell it is that you steer an old pirate boat with. So you got a whole bunch of those, and there's pictures inside those steering mechanisms. But the pictures to me look like they're from a play. So this is, if I get this right, I'm not sure if this is a play film or a dramatic film, a musical film. But I'm not sure why would they use this kind of art if it's not basically just the play being filmed. I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter to me. Number 20, Videodrome. Ooh, what could that possibly be? This is a black background with a whole bunch of taglines and the word Videodrome. And Videodrome is in all different colors, like pixels from a television set. Now here's some of the taglines. Television. It started with your mind. Now it can change your body. Experience the ultimate addiction. The most provocative and terrifying concept of our times, exposed by the creator of Scanners. Okay, this tells me absolutely nothing about the film as far as I'm concerned. It appears to maybe be a horror film, maybe? I don't know. I don't even know if I could put that together back then. The only interesting thing about this is that we know, well, now I know, obviously, but, James Woods and Deborah Harry is in it from Blondie. No way in hell I ever would have seen this at a young age. No way in hell. Especially if I know what it was. If I really know what it was, there's no way I would have stepped anywhere near it. But you do see how many diverse titles they have. So many different things, sci-fi, horror, drama, comedy, they go everywhere. Musicals. Number 21, 6 Weeks. Again, this is a very plain, most likely preliminary art piece. It's only a picture, a portrait picture, basically, of the 3 actors in the film, which are Dudley Moore, Mary Tyler Moore, and there's a girl also, which I imagine that must be their daughter. And this, I'm pretty sure, was a very straight, dramatic piece involving somebody who dies. It just has that feel that somebody's going to die in this movie. Don't remember seeing it. Maybe HBO must have had it at some point. Not entirely sure. Number 22, Halloween 3. Tagline: Witchcraft enters the computer age. A different terror begins. The poster itself, it is a super preliminary piece of art here. What you have is an old, kind of like an Amiga, old-styley computer, a 1981 computer, and it says Halloween written on little pixelated letters right on the screen there, and the screen is wearing a witch hat. In the background, you just have smoke and dark blue and black background. Okay, this is definitely a horror film. I mean, it does tell me up here that it's produced by John Carpenter, and I don't really know if even back then I was familiar with Halloween or Halloween 2, so I don't think I've ever made the connection. This piece of art obviously never made it past this preliminary stage. Most of the artwork that I've ever seen is the 3 kids silhouette, in the Halloween black and orange colors and that kind of stuff. Plus, the film ended up having the subtitle of Season of the Witch, which this doesn't have it at all. This one is just Halloween 3. Boom, there it is. Really, really strange artwork. Number 23, Sophie's Choice. So this is a film that was a big, dramatic, Oscar-eating film. This is Meryl Streep, Kevin Kline, Peter McNichol. The art is a couple of photo frames, one with Meryl Streep, one with Kevin Kline, and there's a clock and a rose on a desk and a pen with an ink container and a lamp, and the tagline is based on the critically acclaimed best-selling novel by William Styron. And you have the novel also on top of the desk, and then a notepad with some writing on it. So this was, again, very preliminary, I imagine, because they were trying to, I guess, promote the writer of this film the most, obviously. But I do know that this was a very big movie in terms of, again, Oscar contender and that kind of thing. So now let's move a little backwards into number 11 and 12. And the reason why I wanted to talk about these together. Number 11 is E.T. So the artwork here is an artwork that I've seen before, which is basically you see these dark clouds with some color lights behind the clouds and some beams of light coming through some of the clouds. And the tagline is, he is afraid, he's totally alone, he's 3 million light years from home. A timeless story from the most original director of our time, a Steven Spielberg film, E.T., the Extraterrestrial, in his adventure on Earth. This is a poster that I've seen many times. They used this, I believe, on the soundtrack. I think they also used it on the initial release, because this kind of a poster doesn't tell you much. I mean, it hides everything. You don't see any characters. You just realize that this is some kind of a space thingy, because it's extraterrestrial. It's right there on the title. But it's also very kiddie, because you see the E and the T written like it's a crayon or something. Starring Dee Wallace, Henry Thomas. I don't remember at the time, and I probably made the connection that because the previous year I had seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, and obviously I had seen a very long time ago before Close Encounters, so I might have made the connection that this might be something that I could handle and that I might like. Obviously, never knowing at the time the monstrosity of a success that this movie was going to be. It was going to eat everything. For years, this became the number one, most profitable movie ever made. But here comes the interesting part. Movie number 12. And these are positioned in this book side by side. E.T. on the left and this movie on the right, called John Carpenter's The Thing. Tagline: man is the warmest place to hide. The art is a piece of art that never really made it past this brochure or some preliminary samples used for promotional purposes. This is the big one. This is The Thing. The poster itself that they're using in this particular booklet here, it's a dark night. You see some mountains and clouds, but they're all black because it's dark. And then you see the white ice in about 2/3, of the bottom of the page. And you see John Carpenter's The Thing is basically made out of like cracks in the ice that get dark, as they go deep. This is a piece of art that I tried to do as much research as possible, and I just could not find anything specific or definitive. What I gathered from the little information I was able to find is that most likely this came from an ad agency. And we talked about the traditional Struzen The Thing poster and how it came about. The story goes, and I'm pretty sure I mentioned it when I talked about that poster many episodes ago, is that he had like 24 hours to come up with this poster. They hired him, and boom, the next day he had to produce something, and that's when you get the guy in the suit with the white light on the head coming out, and he's delivering he has this thing delivered, and like the paint's still wet as it's being delivered. But to me, I almost feel like they might have thought that this is the way they were going to go, that they kept this on, and then at the last minute, they decided to say, no, we can't use this. And there's enough stories out there having to do with how the film was received, and then how they kind of had to adjust the marketing and the advertising as some of that feedback started coming back. If you guys know the story, which again, I'm pretty sure we told it a number of times in different formats, different topics, is that the film was not successful at all. It was a bit of a bomb. They poured a lot of money into it, and this was Carpenter's first studio film. Up until that point, most of the stuff he was doing was independent. They would raise the money through independent means, put out the film, and whatever happens, happens. This was the first time that he was actually doing something for a studio with studio money, which is a lot easier in some ways because, you don't have to be scrambling to find so many different backers, to finance your film. This was also supposed to give him, Carpenter, more studio films to come. And as a matter of fact, after The Thing, he was slated to do Firestarter, and he lost that one because of the failure of The Thing. Now, the story also goes that the original tagline that they put together for this film was "Man is the warmest place to hide." And that was one that was suggested by the same individual from the same ad agency, I believe, that did the Alien in Space No One Can Hear You Scream tagline. But I'm not entirely sure if the poster came from that same company. But I did see enough references that the tagline came from the same company, from the same individual, the same ad agency guy. The specific art was not used practically anywhere else as far as once the film came out. One of the novelizations uses a similar cover, but it's a little different. I mean, it does have the elements, but they're different elements. They're different renderings of those elements. I don't even know if it's the same person. With this particular one, if you could probably see on the artwork that I included, the word "The Thing," it's highlighted by the cracks around the letters. So the letters themselves are white, but the cracks around the letter create the border, if you will, or the shadow, if you will, of cracks that go deep into the earth. The novelization, it kind of does the reverse. It uses the letters to be the cracks in the earth. The actual physical letters are not there. It's just cracks in the earth. So it's a variation of that concept. So what I believe happened was they did a couple of screenings for people. Now, I don't know if you can call them test screenings. I don't know if they were focus groups or what, but there were some preliminary released, controlled, people would write down their comments kind of releases in like 2 different cities. And the feedback came back pretty bad. The Universal executives that were there were also pretty grossed out by the film. Some people really did have a bad reaction to it. And the way that Carpenter was structuring the film and the way that the film was being kind of put together, as far as the way he wanted it to be seen, was more of a horror film. I mean, yes, it does have a sci-fi element to it. So because this is Universal putting out both of these films, E.T. and The Thing, and part of the story that you always hear is that E.T. was the friendly alien, nice family kind of film, and The Thing was this horror monstrosity that nobody wanted to get near because it was scary and gross. If this would have been two different studios, you might have gotten a different outcome, maybe not. But because this was the same studio, you figured that the executives, when they realized that they have these two movies, and they're kind of both about an extraterrestrial being, and E.T. seems to be so much more of a positive film, and this seems to be more of a negative film, they tried to do something about it. And that's when I think you saw the change in posters. They tried to do a quick rebranding, if you will. They wanted it to be more of a sci-fi thing. So they said to themselves, let's try to make this more of something that will appeal to people who saw Alien. So make it more of a space horror than just a horror. John Carpenter was known for horror, Mr. Halloween, for crying out. So one of the things they did was they ordered a new poster, which is how you end up with the Struzan poster. They switched the tagline. Man is the warmest place to hide gets removed, and instead they put the ultimate in alien terror. So they worked the word alien into the tagline in the hopes that people will kind of say, oh, Alien, I remember Alien. It's a big sci-fi kind of thing with a monster. So that's what they did. Even Carpenter and like his producer, I remember reading that when they saw the final poster that they were going to use with the man in the parka, they were disappointed with it. Even though today that's a classic poster and it's a fantastic, wonderful poster, back then they were disappointed because they were like, no, we don't want to be the monster is the man in the suit. That's exactly the opposite. This movie has monsters that are completely so unhuman that it is not your typical 50s man in the rubber suit kind of monster. And that's the feeling that they got when they saw this Struzan poster. The original poster, the one that you see here on this booklet, was great. I love it. I love this poster too. I wish they would have used it more. I wish they would have used it in different markets or whatever. When I look at different countries, they use completely different art. The only places I've ever seen this exact same drawing, this piece of art, is either in this book or in some of the press kits that they released for the movie, would include a small fold-out poster of this. Some of the posters come with, on the bottom, that say a Truman Foster Company production, John Carpenter's The Thing, tagline on top, man is the warmest place to hide, or in the bottom, the full credits. The one in this book that I have doesn't have any kind of credits in the bottom, none of that. It only has John Carpenter's The Thing in the middle, and then man is the warmest place to hide in the bottom. Completely different. Again, I love this poster. Recently rediscovered it, and I remember like looking at these pictures when I was younger and saying, wow, that's interesting. I mean, this, on the left side, you have this very friendly, Spielberg-y, child-friendly, appropriate age E.T. And then on the right side, there's something about The Thing, and man, it's the warmest place to hide. And I don't know about that. That's just a little weird. Obviously, I didn't see the Thing in the theater. Again, I was frightened of horror films back then and having to bring a parent. However, 1982 was also when I saw Blade Runner. And that is something that I said, I have to see that. I don't care if it's R-rated. Somebody's coming with me. This is Harrison Ford. After Raiders of the Lost Ark, after Empire Strikes Back, I am going to see this movie, like it or not. But this is one of these posters now that I'm looking for. Most likely it's going to be a reproduction because they have to blow it up. The catch is, the tricky thing, as usual, is when you're dealing with reproductions, is finding something that is of a good quality that when they blow it up, it doesn't get blurry. But this is a really, really important piece, of the history, I think, of obviously the advertising of this film. It's really disappointing that it's so hard, when you're dealing with agencies, it is so hard to narrow down the name of the agency, to get the name. And then if you even find the agency, to get the name of the artist, because with agencies, you deal with the art director and the president of the company and this guy and that guy. And everybody seems to take credit for a lot of this stuff when you don't really know exactly who is responsible for specific things. Because this has happened before where credit is given to a certain person and he might be just like the director of the department, but not the actual artist who thought of the art, that kind of stuff. But again, this book, being able to find this book, and I ended up buying it on eBay, as usual, where you find a lot of this junk. It only cost me, I think, $20. Some of them were very expensive. Like, for example, those press kits that I was telling you about that also include this little poster. Yeah, it's like in the $100+ range to $200-$300 range. It's like really rare. But this might be the only way to get this particular version of the poster, as far as I know, because like I said, the other ones have a little bit of a different additions to it. But this book, to me, it's really cool because it's a trip back in time. It's a trip back in time. And the most fascinating thing about it that I mentioned before is the fact that I had no idea what these things were. And I'm looking at these things and I'm like, I don't know, maybe this one's good. Oh, definitely not seeing that. Oh, I don't want to see that. That's a scary one. I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. So yeah, it's kind of weird. The book, one final thing I want to mention is that it says in the bottom of the book, on the last page, it says Design Seiniger Advertising, printed in the USA. I tried doing a search for that to see if it would help me figure out anything about the advertising agency. It just got me nowhere. So if one day I find more information, more accurate information, I'll let you guys know. And I am going to look for this poster somehow reproduced so I can display it because it's a really cool looking poster. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. Just like it happens many times during our shows, just when I think I'm done with the subject matter, and I do remember mentioning that, I am hoping in the future I will run into some of these items, that I'll be able to find them, this or that. Well, that's exactly what happened once again. Over the last week or two, instead of putting the show out, I made a couple of bids on eBay, and I won a couple of auctions, including number one, another supplement from Variety, again from that same year, from 1982, which has, this is big. This is just as big as the booklet that I talked about, but this is just a 2-page fold-out kind of supplement. In the front, it says, "It fell from the sky and lay buried in ice for 100,000 years. Soon it will be free and become one of us." Then you open up the fold out and you have a whole bunch of pictures from the thing, some publicity, some scenes, in color, collage kind of thing. And then if you close the page again, in the back, you have the poster that I talked about earlier. And this is the one that has the credits. It has all the credits of the film. The only thing it doesn't have is the R rating. Interesting, because I guess at that point they weren't certain they were getting that R rating, because I'm pretty sure they had to tone the movie down to get an R rating because of some of the horrific special effects. Now, this is a absolutely gorgeous thing. The quality of it is the same poster as before. In other words, it's the same one as the booklet, except that they actually put some text on the bottom to have it resemble a movie poster. You have all the credits, like for a normal movie poster, and in the bottom it says, "Coming in July to a theater near you from Universal Pictures." And it's like, awesome. This thing is just plain and simply gorgeous, awesome. It is frameable. If I needed to, I would frame it, just like the one from the Universal booklet. This one's actually a little bigger because the one on the Universal booklet is just, they kind of crop it so you can read all those other credits on the right-hand side, I believe. This one, it is the entire size of the booklet. So on left and right, you have the proper proportions for a movie poster. So that's really neat. The other thing that I got is an actual reproduction, obviously, because from as far as I can tell, they never went full tilt size, movie poster size on this art. Well, I found a place through eBay that they take the image that has the art from the booklet, like I said before, and it just has in the bottom, instead of all the credits, it has a Truman Foster Company production, John Carpenter's The Thing. Different style. Now this is I think it's like 24 by 36. I have it over there. It's just great. It is just perfect. The quality is very good. I won't say it's excellent. I think it's very good. The stock of the paper is fantastic, shiny, thick stock. The pictures are a little bit slightly blurry, not the sharpest I've ever seen because it is a reproduction. Not as sharp as you see them on these smaller booklets, because obviously these smaller booklets are the original. So that's where they came from. Anybody that is making a poster, and there's a few people making them, but this is the one that I wanted. So I have that up on my wall now for my posters of the month. And like I mentioned before, very difficult to find any additional information. I kept digging, and that is something that I do promise in the future. If possible, I will try to give you a little more information on it. A few other items I wanted to mention that I found after the fact, because I've been looking if anybody other than fan art, because when you're dealing with fan art, that's a whole other world. But if there was any official licensing product that used this art, and I did find one item. I found a video of somebody who reviews all of the different home video versions, especially DVD, Blu-ray, 4K of The Thing. And one of the ones he talks about, and one of the ones he shows us on the video, is a limited edition slipcover only from Scream Factory. So this is basically, if you ordered the Scream Factory 2016 version of The Thing, which they put out as a special edition they made, you could also purchase it through them with an alternative slipcover case. And here's where this kicks in. Not in the front, the back of the slipcover uses this art, which nobody seems to really care. I mean, most people are more into the front, the cover art. It's completely different, completely different artistic design. But in the back, you do see this particular picture, which is really, really cool in terms of, oh, here we go. You can check it off on the list. There is somebody else who used it. I know that, as I mentioned before, the novelizations, some of them have something that's close but no cigar. But this one, yes, they actually used that shot or that piece of promotional art. Another thing I wanted to mention is that, yes, a lot of the movies that we discussed that are in that book, I can confirm that, yes, a lot of the art that we see there is preliminary art, and some of it is not even preliminary. It's just like a placeholder. It wasn't even art. I think the Pirates of Penzance, I was confused as to whether the movie was going to be a play or an actual live action film, because the art they were using looked like shots of a play. But no, it's a real movie. It's a musical, and it's really shot on film, and it looks like a movie. But yeah, a lot of that stuff. Sophie's Choice, same thing. Preliminary art. It's not the final product. And there were some movies in the mix that were actually pushed to 1983. So that's even more unusual and interesting, is that, again, it's very hard to predict. And we see this all the time, especially with Star Wars and Marvel. It's very hard to predict and to stick to your plan of whatever it is that you have a slate of films, and you're telling the general audience that next year we're going to give you these 20 films or whatever. And then for one or another reason, some of those films are not completed in time, or they somehow figure out that they won't make as much money if you release them on a certain season, so they have to push them to another season, which then pushes them to the following year. Nowadays, I mean, back then, I don't really remember, because back then, 1982, that's just like the beginning of the home video rental craziness that started happening in the 80s. So I don't remember, what did they used to do with a movie that after they shoot it and they realize they don't have a hit, they have a little bit of a turkey on their hands, where did they offload those kind of movies? Nowadays, obviously, you throw it on a streamer somewhere, you put it in on demand or something. 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago even, you could throw it on video, put it on a video store, put it on Blockbuster, the 800th horror film that really nobody rents, that kind of stuff in the bargain bin. But I'm wondering what happens to those films in the early 80s. I know obviously a lot of them, they can probably dump them on cable, because back then cable was the alternative place to go and catch up on some of this non-A grade or even B grade films. Yeah, that's the place where a lot of this stuff would end up, until obviously, your video stores took over in terms of popularity and dumping ground for films that were not that popular. But yeah, from when I started going through all of these films, and I started comparing, like, for example, like there's a movie, A Little Sex, and there was like super plain graphic name, that's it. And then I'm like, oh, let's see if this was a real movie, or like whatever happened to this movie. And boom, you bounce into Google there and you put in the name, and first you end up with a whole bunch of porn stuff, but you have to type a movie 1982 Universal. So you don't end up in the wrong place. And yeah, that's okay. It's a legitimate movie. The poster has nothing to do. And like I said before, yeah, you take a movie like Halloween 3, that was such a preliminary teaser poster design. A couple of them, I would say maybe a third or a quarter of the films that you got to see there. Yeah, a lot of the art, even if it's actually drawn art, it could be conceptual drawings, it could be drawings by different artists. By the time the real poster comes out, there are so many changes to that poster. So that's very, very, here's my favorite word, interesting. It's very interesting, how these posters develop from that form. Nowadays, it's a lot, I don't know if you could say more difficult in terms of when studios do want to give you an update of what's coming down. I mean, I know for the last 10, 15 years with Star Wars, for example, or Marvel films. I mean, look at Marvel films. We used to get those yearly, okay, here's the unveiling of, it was almost like an Apple rollout. They would show you, Kevin Feige would come out and they would tell you, here's the slate of phase 2 or phase 3, and you have all these films, and you're like, oh my God, there's like 15 films here, and this goes into next year, and that goes into that year, And they've slowly learned their lesson, and they can't do that anymore. Even Star Wars, same thing with Star Wars. But Marvel, especially Marvel, they can't really give you that much of a peek, because it got to the point now where a third of these films never make it. They either have to change plans, change directors, push the film to another year, cancel a film. There's so many variables now that it's really, really difficult to give the audience such a huge slate of what the roadmap is going to be. So I think they're pulling back a little bit now. I mean, not to the point where they don't tell you anything, but they cannot, predict these things so much. And again, I'm not sure if modern print, print is going away little by little between newspapers, but I don't know if the entertainment rags, the Varieties, the Hollywood Reporter, all those kind of entertainment newspaper magazines, I don't know if they still include this kind of marketing promotional materials that Universal used to put out. From looking on Google or even eBay, the early 80s seemed to be a period where these booklets were included, or maybe just one movie, just like this. Not necessarily a booklet with 10 or 15 or 20 movies, but I've seen, for example, Scarface having one of these 2-page big foldable, large size promotional advertisements like that. I think I saw one for from Fox for Return of the Jedi or Revenge of the Jedi, So something tells me this is more of an 80s kind of thing that kind of went out the window at a certain point. Anyhow, this has been a blast. I absolutely loved the amount of material that I was able to find going back and going over all of these films that I was looking at when I was younger and not realizing how important these movies are going to be in the future or even at that time. And given that it was 1982, once again, I keep mentioning it and we've had shows about this, probably the best year of our lives in terms of genre filmmaking, how many good things were out there, and a good portion of them, I didn't touch them till way later. But with this The Thing poster, oh man, it just triggered such a rush of, I remember, of looking at that poster and saying, oh, that looks interesting, but I don't know. I have a feeling it's going to be a little too scary for me. And I passed on it. And then finally, I don't know when, it was HBO probably, or maybe Laserdisc or whatever it was, that I finally got around to see it. And oh my God, this thing is awesome. Just like Conan, I passed on it first and then I grabbed it afterwards and it was like, it's fantastic. So if you guys are interested in, these kind of posters, I'm sure they're out there, the very obscure, very promotional concept, if you will. You take a movie like Star Wars or Star Trek or Indiana Jones, one of those big kind of movies, and there's going to be tons and tons of promotional and concept material. But you might be looking at a little more of an obscure film that doesn't have as much preliminary work in terms of promoting that gets turned into a poster. A good route for this, I think I might have talked about this earlier, is international posters. A lot of times, all of that artwork that gets commissioned to do XYZ, whatever film you happen to be working on, no matter what the budget is, sometimes they'll use that additional art on the foreign markets. Sometimes, if you can afford it, you will even hire foreign artists to do the art for that country. Star Wars did that. Some other films have done that. But in this case, I am shocked. I am still shocked at the fact that this particular poster was not used for The Thing in some other territory. But as I mentioned before, it all has to do with the marketing of the film. They wanted to go a different way at the last minute based on the reviews. So they changed the advertising campaign as far as the art and the tagline goes. But I am super happy with the purchases I made. The poster, like I said, is hanging up high. This booklet, which some of the prices I've seen out there can go into the hundreds or even more. I only got it for like $20 and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you soon here at GeekFest Rants. Bye-bye, everybody.
$100,000 years ago, it found its way into our galaxy. Trapped in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica, it could not escape. Now the men of Station 4 have made a monumental discovery. An alien creature had frozen, but not to death. And man,
It isn't Benny!
is the warmest place to hide.
If you would like to subscribe to our show, send us messages, or see video links to some of the topics we talked about today, please visit our homepage at geekfestrants.com or our YouTube channel, Facebook page, or iTunes at GeekFest Rants.
I don't know what we're yelling about!
GeekFest Rants is produced by Carlos Perone, copyright 2024.
This broadcast is part of the IC Robots Radio Network. Visit icrobots.com for this and many other nerd/nostalgia related podcasts. You won't be sorry for long.